That breaking news is another live look at protests continuing into the night in Los Angeles and here in Portland as well in response to immigration arrests and deportations. On the left side of your screen is law enforcement in downtown L.A. earlier tonight with zip ties around their wrists of some protesters. On the right side is some footage from our crews of protesters tonight at the ICE detention facility in Southwest Portland. And tonight we are taking a deep dive at both of those protests as they unfold. Thanks for joining us at 11. I'm Barry Mangold. Now, on the fourth day of protests in Los Angeles, roughly 700 Marines are now responding to the city, in addition to thousands of California National Guard troops. Here in Portland, it's a different situation. Our Tanvi Verma was covering a protest outside the ICE facility near the South Waterfront off of I-5. But Tanvi, in just the last 30 or 40 minutes, you and your photographer decided to get some distance from the protest. Tell us why.
Yeah, so Barry, in the last 30-ish minutes or so, a mob of about 30 people charged at us with a bat and sticks. And moments before that, they were yelling racial slurs at my colleague and I. Luckily, we had security and they ushered us out of the situation, and we're totally okay. And we're here to do our job and tell you about how things were before all of that transpired. And while they were passionate, they were certainly peaceful. It's been multiple days since some started camping outside the ICE building in South Portland, many fired up about deportations.
My father is an immigrant, and he has been taken from my family by ICE multiple times. It has destroyed us, and he is one of the most hardworking people I know.
Portland Police Chief Bob Day confirming 2 protesters were arrested over the weekend.
This is an unusual step. We traditionally do not clear the driveway. We did take that initial step on Saturday night, Sunday morning, which I am in agreement with. I believe it was an appropriate action by our members to de-escalate a potentially tense situation.
No troops on our streets! No troops on our streets!
Over in downtown Vancouver, a similar sentiment.
Defend due process! Defend due process!
I live across the street from a farm, berry farm, and I watch the immigrants every day go out and work their butts off to provide us food.
Others, like this veteran, unhappy with President Donald Trump's decision to bring the National Guard into protests against ICE in Los Angeles.
The National Guard should not be there. Let the local police handle it. And if he actually sends in the Marines, they shouldn't be there either. They're not supposed to be there.
A lot to break down there in terms of the metro area. Now, we do have the extended press conference with Chief Bob Day to talk about how they plan to go about protests in the future. More on that on our website at KATV.com. Barry?
All right, Tanvi Verma, thank you. And a lot going on in the metro area. You can go to our website to see an extended version of our interview with Police Chief Bob Day in Portland and his conversation with the press on how to handle upcoming protests. And in response to the protests, a spokesperson for ICE said this tonight: U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement fully respects the constitutional rights of all people to peacefully express their opinions. That being said, ICE remains committed to performing its immigration enforcement mission consistent with federal law and agency policy.
Steve, late today, they got part of what they're asking for when a judge set bail at $50,000 for David Huerta's release. However, Huerta still faces the possibility of federal felony criminal charge, and say that in general, immigrants are coming increasingly under attack. Led by the Service Employees International Union and others, this march and rally called for an end to the immigration raids and for David Huerta's immediate release.
No hate, no fear. Immigrants are welcome here.
Huerta is an SEIU president in California. Union members say he was assaulted, injured, and detained while advocating for immigrant workers.
All I can say is that he was exercising his First Amendment rights. Like we do in many of these demonstrations, it's a constitutionally protected right.
David Huerta, a U.S. citizen, was picked up. If we are not all angry and outraged and see the demise of our democracy in this moment, then we're not paying attention.
About 200 people took part and filled the plaza outside City Hall, where they denounced the Trump administration and called for people to stand together against injustice.
And so for us, it's really about ensuring that that, that they have due process of law, regardless of their immigration status.
They also said the National Guard should have never been mobilized against ordinary citizens, especially when California's governor didn't want a military force deployed.
Our fight for David Huerta is symbolic.
Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell made a brief appearance at the rally and voiced his support for David Huerta and his cause. City Councilmember Alexis Mercedes Rink was also on hand. The Seattle rally ended peacefully, unlike the images we've seen out of Los Angeles with clashes between protesters and police, which led to dozens of arrests.
I think this is a moment for us to come together and for our local and state leaders to actually stand and also see this on attack of state and local rights.
So although Huerta was allowed to post bail, he is not in the clear at this point. He still faces the possibility of a felony charge for conspiracy to impede officers. Reporting live, Joel Marino, Como News. Joel.
And right here in the capital region, the New York Immigration Coalition is also calling for action.
Yeah, so lawmakers and allies are set to gather at West Capitol Park in Albany. Lawmakers and allies, that's where they're going to be. Laura, so can you tell us what they're pushing for?
Good morning. The New York Immigration Coalition and supporters are calling on legislative leaders to bring critical public safety and an immigration rights vote to law. They want elected officials to stand with their immigrant constituents and the governor to sign both bills into law. CBS 6 recently spoke with activists Lael Davidson and Renee Roundtree with Indivisible ADK Saratoga, who have been fighting for a man residing in Glens Falls that was recently detained by ICE. Yuri Zinofiev walked into the ICE office in Ballston Spot twice a year for years, but last week he was detained.
This is a man who is a working part of our community, who has been incarcerated for no reason without due process.
It's horrific. It's very sad. You know, when you think that he's been here for 25 years, he's been a productive member of our community.
He now sits behind bars at the Buffalo Federal Detention Facility. Without immediate action from Albany, families remain at risk of being torn apart through local police and ICE. The rally is expected to be held at noon at West Capitol Park in Albany. Reporting live in Albany, Laura Jimette, CBS 6 News.
For an ICE protest in Providence.
Yeah, it started outside the federal building before protesters marched through city streets, as you can see right here. The Night Team's John Perrick is in Providence now with the latest. John?
Well, Dan and Emily, protesters tell us that inside that building is a Homeland Security office. A few hundred gathered, including a state rep.
Abolish ICE! Abolish ICE!
A call for action.
I think that it's clear to all the regular working people of the U.S. that these attacks, these mass deportations and raids on our immigrant communities are completely unjust.
We're talking about how resistance is glorious and how we will be victorious!
Protesters tonight gathering near the Federal Center building on Westminster Street. The rally was planned by the group PSL Rhode Island in response to the ongoing protests in Los Angeles, which the National Guard was called to. Do you guys support how chaotic these protests have gotten? Shouldn't they be peaceful?
I think people have a right to dignity. We have a right to be with our families. We have a right to work and live safely. And people's anger right now is righteous.
The protesters then took off, walking down the streets of Providence, going block to block for hours. Their message was clear.
It means fundamentally that the streets belong to the people. The streets belong to the working class. If we can and need to, we can shut it down.
Tonight's protest comes a day after Rhode Island State Representative Enrique Sanchez called for a, quote, massive anti-ICE protest on social media, saying, quote, like the one in L.A. Shouldn't they be peaceful, though? Shouldn't they be peaceful protests? Do you support what's going on there?
I condemn all violence.
But you did call for L.A.-like protests in Rhode Island. Did you mean peaceful, or did you mean what was going on in Los Angeles?
I believe my words were taken out of context.
We need to show the people power. We need to show who has the real control and who has the real power in this country.
And right now it's unclear if any more protests will ensue here in Providence. For the NBC 10 News Night Team reporting live, I'm John Perrick.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Darian Trotter. The National Guard has arrived in Los Angeles after violent protest over ICE raids intensified Friday. President Trump signed a memorandum that deployed 2,000 National Guardsmen to help restore order there. Law enforcement in riot gear formed A line near the Metropolitan Detention Center after an unlawful assembly was declared. It's where many of the people arrested in ICE raids were being brought. Flashbangs and other irritants were used to break up the crowd, while California Governor Gavin Newsom and Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass have criticized the move as unnecessary. Those in the Trump administration say order needs to be restored.
Unfortunately, we've seen some violent protests happen, and that's why these National Guard soldiers are being utilized to help with some security in some areas. They're there at the direction of the president in order to keep peace and allow people to be able to protest, but also to keep law and order. That is incredibly important to the president.
The memorandum will allow National Guard troops to be in Los Angeles for at least the next 60 days. Protests are continuing throughout the city today, and we will be sure to keep an eye on them for you. All eyes have been on Los Angeles, but other anti-ICE demonstrations are happening across the nation. San Antonio had its own protest this morning calling for a stop to national ICE raids. News 4 San Antonio's Phil Sterling joins us now live from downtown where it happened. Phil.
Darian, first and foremost, this protest was nothing like you've been seeing in Los Angeles. It was a peaceful protest where people spoke out against the deportations going on across the country. They lined up on these steps to have their voices heard. The name of the protest, ICE out of San Antonio. People were holding up signs saying things like abolish ICE and immigrants make America great again. There were even chants saying from Palestine to Mexico, all the walls have got to go. NBC News reports on Thursday, ICE said it had detained more than 2,200 people, the most in a single day ever. Some of those who were in San Antonio with immigrants some of those who were here in San Antonio with immigrants going to immigration court only had their cases dismissed, and then they were put into custody after they went to those cases.
We're tired of seeing those horrific scenes that we have been seeing all over the country, where families are being ripped apart right in front of a justice institution where we're supposed to be seeing due process.
The protest organizers say it's important to hold protests like this to strengthen the community behind one message. I reached out to officials with the city to see if they had a statement on this protest, and I also reached out to SAPD to see if there are any concerns with any future protests possibly turning violent like some of those in Los Angeles. Phil Sterling reporting live, or well, they didn't get back to me, but Phil Sterling reporting live, News 4 San Antonio.